Why only the chosen women have these 7 hidden marks. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." This video invites you to explore the rare and powerful traits that set certain women apart, not by status or appearance, but by soul signature. These 7 hidden marks are not random. They are signs of inner initiation, spiritual calling, and divine purpose. If you've ever felt different, misunderstood, or like you're carrying a deeper mission, this message might be for you. As you listen, reflect on your own journey. Have you noticed any of these signs within yourself? Drop a comment below, sharing which one resonates most, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to stay connected to more soulful insights here on Spiritual Wisdom. 1. She has a scar that turned into a sword. A chosen woman has endured betrayal, heartbreak, and loss not once, but many times, and yet she never let those moments define her. Instead of allowing pain to turn her bitter, she turned it into fuel. Every scar on her heart became a symbol of survival, and each wound transformed into a weapon of wisdom. She doesn't wear her scars like chains. She carries them like armor. What was once meant to break her now builds her. Just like Joseph, who was cast aside by his own brothers and later rose to power with grace and forgiveness. And like Hannah, whose tears watered the seed of a prophet, the chosen woman's suffering was not pointless. It was preparation. Her trials weren't punishment. They were divine training. In the silence of her loneliness and in the chaos of her storms, she was being refined. Carl Jung believed that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And this woman has done just that. She didn't run from her shadow. She met it. She didn't suppress her grief. She turned it into prayer. Her worship is not a performance for others. It's a cry from the battlefield. It rises not from a place of perfection, but from the ashes of survival. She has been through things that would crush most people, but instead of collapsing, she stood. And when she couldn't stand, she knelt. And when she couldn't speak, she wept. And even then, especially then, she was chosen. What separates her isn't her beauty, her intellect, or her success. It's the quiet strength forged in seasons no one saw. It's the sword she forged from her suffering. While the world often worships surface strength, she carries a sacred resilience. Carl Jung's teachings on individuation remind us that true wholeness only comes when we face the darkest corners of our psyche and claim them with compassion. This woman has done that work. She has integrated the light and the dark, the loss and the lesson, the ache and the awakening. Her presence carries a weight, not because she's loud, but because she's lived. She doesn't need to prove her worth. She already paid for it in tears. When others gave up on her, she leaned into faith. When love disappointed her, she didn't harden, she deepened. Her softness is not weakness. It's proof of her power. She knows that healing is not linear, and growth is not always visible. She also knows that every setback is sacred when seen through spiritual eyes. The scar that turned into a sword didn't just change her, it anointed her. And that sword isn't to harm, it's to guard the sacred calling on her life. Behind her quiet demeanor is a warrior spirit. Behind her smile is a history of battles won in secret. She is not just surviving, she is rising. With every scar, she becomes more whole, more honest, and more aligned with the woman she was always meant to be. If you've ever turned your pain into power, share your story in the comments so others can be inspired by your strength. If not yet, comment, "I will rise," and let this be the beginning of your transformation. 2. She lives with divine discontent. Even when everything on the surface seems fine, when her life looks successful, her relationship seems steady, and there's no obvious reason for unrest, a chosen woman often carries a silent ache, a spiritual restlessness that others can't see or understand. It's not confusion or discontent in the traditional sense. It's something deeper. It's heaven's whisper in her soul, a sacred pull urging her toward a greater purpose. Carl Jung spoke of this inner stirring when he said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." And that's exactly what happens inside her. She is not driven by ego or ambition, but by an inner knowing that she was never meant to settle for a life that looks good on the outside, but feels small on the inside. There is a divine discomfort that follows her, an invisible thread that pulls her forward, no matter how tempting it might be to stay in comfort. Like Queen Esther, she wasn't placed in position for convenience. She was placed there for a spiritual mission. While others rest in routine, she wrestles with revelation. While others seek stability, she is called to stretch. This is one of the sacred marks of a chosen woman. She does not numb her longing, she honors it. She understands that this holy ache is not a weakness, but a sign that her soul remembers something more. She can sense when her environment is too small for her growth. She can feel when her spirit is being called to rise, even if rising means leaving things behind. Gratitude lives in her heart, but so does the refusal to settle. It's not that she isn't thankful for what she has, she is, but she also knows that the spiritual path requires motion, and purpose demands transformation. Her soul will not allow her to stay hidden, no matter how comfortable the hiding place may be. And so, she learns to live in tension, grateful yet hungry, grounded yet reaching, peaceful yet on fire. That duality is not a contradiction. It is the evidence of divine selection. Heaven marks her not with ease, but with evolution. She isn't chasing something more because she's dissatisfied. She's following the voice of destiny because she knows she was made for more. This mark is not visible, but it is powerful. It shows up in her decisions, her prayers, her silence, her resistance to conformity. She may not always know where she's going, but she knows she cannot stay where she is. That's what makes her different. That's what makes her chosen. She follows the ache, trusts the whisper, obeys the shift. Because deep down, she understands something that others may never see. That divine discomfort is a sacred guide, a spiritual fire, a reminder from heaven that she carries a calling too big to be ignored. Comment below, "I was made for more," if you feel that holy restlessness within you. Let's honor the calling together. 3. She feels deeply and carries hidden burdens. The chosen woman is marked by a depth of emotion that most cannot comprehend. She feels not only her own pain, but absorbs the silent sorrow of others like a sponge soaked in unspoken prayers. Her soul is not just tender, it is finely tuned to the emotional undercurrents that ripple beneath the surface of life. She weeps, not because she is weak, but because she is entrusted. Like Jesus, who wept for Lazarus, her tears are not empty expressions. They are sacred intercessions, carrying the invisible weight of others' grief straight to the heart of heaven. Her soul is a vessel of divine empathy, and she often carries burdens that were never hers to begin with. yet she does so with a grace that defies explanation. This is not merely emotional sensitivity. This is prophetic sensitivity. She can feel a room shift before a word is spoken, sense pain behind a smile, hear the ache behind silence. She is the intercessor in the shadows, praying prayers that no one else dares to utter, feeling what others have buried, holding space where others have walked away. And while the world may overlook her, heaven leans in. She does not seek applause, and she rarely receives recognition. Yet the work she does in spirit echoes through generations. She is not loud, but she is thunderous in the spirit realm. Her strength is misunderstood, her softness mistaken for fragility. But those who truly see her understand she is made of fire wrapped in silk. Her burdens are heavy because her soul is ancient, chosen, and prepared for spiritual labor that others are not built to carry. And to the man who meets her, who slows down long enough to feel her presence, there is a shift stirring in his own soul, as if her pain whispers truths he's never dared to face. She becomes a reflection of the divine, not because she tries to be, but because she is. And this mark, the ability to feel deeply and carry what others discard, is one of the sacred signs that her soul is chosen. She is not broken by what she feels. She is refined by it. The suffering she carries becomes sacred fuel, not only to heal others, but to awaken them. And while her path is often lonely, it is not without purpose. For in her hidden tears lies the spiritual architecture of restoration, compassion, and divine wisdom. She does not explain her depth, because she knows it cannot be explained. It must be experienced. Those who truly see her see not just a woman, but a soul that has been carved by suffering into the shape of sacred service. And that, more than anything, is why she is chosen. Don't forget to subscribe for more wisdom on carrying sacred burdens with strength and grace. And if you feel the weight of others' pain in your spirit, comment below. My tears are a prayer, so we know you're one of heaven's quiet intercessors. 4. She attracts unprovoked attacks. She attracts unprovoked attacks not because she is weak, but because she is powerful in ways most people can't explain. Her presence alone unsettles what is hidden in others, their shadows, insecurities, and unhealed wounds. Carl Jung taught that what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size, and her light, simply by existing, stirs the darkness in those who have not yet faced themselves. She is not just a woman. She is a mirror, a force, a vessel of something far greater than the world understands. She walks into a room and shifts its atmosphere without saying a word. Her truth disrupts illusions, and that disruption is deeply uncomfortable for those who live in lies. She doesn't have to prove her worth. Her energy speaks for her. Like Mary, the mother of Jesus, her obedience to her higher calling becomes a threat to every force that thrives in silence and submission. She carries grace like armor, and though she may be bruised by life, she turns every wound into wisdom. The spiritual warfare that surrounds her is not random. It is a reflection of the weight she carries, the purpose encoded in her soul. Carl Jung's idea of individuation, the soul's process of becoming whole, is not some abstract concept for her. It is her lived experience. Every attack is a strange validation that she's on the right path. She is not here to fit in. She's here to awaken. An awakening always disturbs comfort. Her very existence reminds others of what they've forgotten: their truth, their power, their purpose. And so, She becomes a target not because she seeks conflict, but because she embodies clarity in a world that profits off confusion. They project onto her what they cannot confront within themselves. She is judged for her silence, misunderstood for her solitude, and feared for her strength. But none of it breaks her. In fact, it reveals her. As she rises from every attempt to diminish her, she becomes more refined, more radiant, more rooted in the truth of who she is. She doesn't respond with vengeance. She responds with vision. Because she knows her battle is not of the flesh, it is spiritual. She was never meant to fight like the world fights. Her power is in her stillness, in her discernment, in her refusal to become what tried to break her. She is not a victim of darkness. She is proof that light cannot be extinguished. And so, while the world may not understand her, the soul does. The soul recognizes its own kind. She is not here to be liked. She is here to be light. Do you feel the attacks but stand anyway? Then you already know you're a threat to darkness. If this message resonates, declare it boldly in the comments. I carry light, and darkness fears me. 5. She is misunderstood and often isolated. She is not excluded because she is unclear. She is excluded because she is uncommon. Spiritually chosen women carry a presence, a depth, and a calling that others often misread as arrogance or aloofness, when in truth, it is a sacred distinction. You may be labeled as too quiet, too intense, too different. But what they call too much is often just the mark of someone who doesn't belong to the world, but to something far greater. Like Jesus in the wilderness, Moses in exile, or David tending sheep while everyone else was at the table, the chosen woman is set apart not as punishment, but as preparation. The silence around you is not a void, it's a sanctuary. Carl Jung taught that loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. This is the soul of your journey. You are not meant to be understood by everyone, because your spirit speaks a language most have never heard. When God selects someone for a spiritual purpose, He often removes them from environments that would dim their light. Rejection becomes a form of divine insulation, protection from influence, drama, and distraction. You are not being cast out. You are being called up. The spiritual woman doesn't chase attention. She carries alignment. She walks into rooms and shifts energy without saying a word. Not because she is trying to prove her worth, but because she already knows it. This quiet confidence often unnerves others who rely on external validation to feel whole. But you, the chosen one, were never meant to blend in. You were designed to rise differently, love deeper, and see through veils that others don't even know exist. Solitude becomes your classroom, your cocoon, your consecrated space of transformation. Where others see absence, you experience presence. Where others see silence, you are having conversations with the divine. Your journey doesn't follow the straight road. It bends, breaks, and rebuilds until your inner structure can support the magnitude of your calling. What feels like being left out is often spiritual refinement. What feels like being overlooked is God's way of keeping you hidden until you're ready not to survive, but to lead, to heal, to awaken others through your very presence. This is not rejection. It's recognition from heaven that your soul is not meant for the average path. It's a reminder that the crowd will never validate what was placed in you by the Creator. So when the world doesn't see you, don't shrink and stand taller. When they misunderstand you, speak less and listen more. You are not alone. You are being led. You are not forgotten. You are being formed. And everything you endure in the shadows is shaping you into someone who will walk boldly in the light. If you believe your isolation has a divine purpose, don't hesitate to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's stand together in faith and trust that what feels like rejection is often God's redirection. 6. She grows in the dark. Her strength is not born in noise, but in the sacred quiet where no one is watching. She grows in the dark, unseen, uncelebrated, and often misunderstood. Yet, beneath the surface, her soul is expanding. Like a seed buried in silence, she's not buried to be forgotten, but planted to rise. There are no crowds, no praise, no spotlight, only the deep work of becoming. These are the women Carl Jung might say are navigating their unconscious depths, becoming whole, not by avoiding suffering, but by embracing the shadows. They are not ordinary women. They are chosen souls, shaped by stillness and refined in fire. And though their beauty isn't always loud, it is unforgettable. She carries silence as her first mark, not because she has nothing to say, but because she's learned to speak with her energy. Her silence is not absence, it's presence. Like Ruth, she grows in loyalty long before recognition. In the unseen seasons, she learns to trust in divine timing rather than public validation. Her silence isn't a void, it's a signal of depth. She doesn't need to prove her worth. She walks as if she already knows it. Souls like hers don't chase the light. They are the light, even in the dark. Her second mark is resilience. Life has tested her in ways that could have destroyed her, yet she remains intact, not because she is untouched, but because she is unbroken. Like Joseph, betrayed and abandoned before he ruled in wisdom, she too has turned betrayal into discernment and rejection into power. Her scars don't define her, they anoint her. She has fallen, wept, and risen again. Not for attention, but because something inside her refused to die. She is a soul that knows how to resurrect herself. Her third mark is spiritual discernment. She doesn't judge by what she sees, but by what she senses. Her intuition is not an emotional reaction, it's a compass. Like Moses, who heard God in the wilderness, she hears truth where others hear noise. She reads the unspoken, detects energy shifts, and walks in knowing without explanation. She cannot be deceived by charm or empty words she has seen too much, felt too deeply, to be moved by anything less than authenticity. The fourth mark is solitude, not as punishment, but as preparation. She is not lonely in her loneliness. She is aligned. In seasons when no one called, when the world grew quiet, she found her own voice. She became her own friend, her own healer. And because of that, she enters rooms with wholeness, not hunger. She doesn't need attention. She carries peace. Her aura soothes before she even speaks. She's not here to take. She's here to reflect the presence she fought to become. Purpose marks her fifth trait. She moves with intention, even when the path is unclear. She may not have a perfect plan, but her soul carries a blueprint. She doesn't dabble in chaos because she values clarity. She's not impressed by power because she knows alignment is stronger. Her relationships are filtered through meaning. She chooses connection over convenience. And when a man meets her, he is not meeting a role, but a soul walking in quiet obedience to a divine call. The sixth mark is transformation. She does not resist change. She lives in it. She has died to old selves many times. She is not who she was last year, last month, or even yesterday. She allows the ego to fall away so that the soul can rise. Her growth is not performance, it is presence. Like Jung taught, she has made the unconscious conscious. She knows her patterns, faces her shadows, and no longer calls fate what was once fear. She is not fixed. She is fluid, yet fiercely grounded. And finally, her seventh mark is reverence. She honors what others overlook. She speaks with intention, never to harm, but to heal. Even in disagreement, her energy blesses. She does not belittle, she uplifts. Her presence carries weight, not because she demands it, but because she embodies it. She is not trying to impress. She is trying to live in truth. And when you sit across from her, you will not feel judged. You will feel seen. These women don't enter your life to be admired. They arrive as mirrors, revealing the places in you that are ready to evolve. Their marks are not for show, they are soul signatures, visible only to men who have the eyes to see and the depth to understand. If you believe this message was meant for you, repeat after me. Even in the dark, God is growing me. I trust the process and receive His timing. If that resonates with your spirit, like this video, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We're growing together. 7. She has unshakable joy in dry places. She walks through deserts of delay, loss, and heartbreak, yet carries a joy that seems almost otherworldly, not because life has been kind, but because her soul has made a covenant with peace. Her joy doesn't ask for circumstances to change. It declares that even if they don't, she will not be moved. This joy is not performative, not borrowed, not shallow. It is spiritual steel, forged in fire. Like the Proverbs 31 woman, she is clothed in strength and dignity, and she can laugh at the days ahead, not because they are guaranteed to be easy, but because she knows her roots run deeper than the storm. Her laughter is not a mask, it's a weapon. Her praise is not naive, it's warfare. And her peace is not passive, it's power. Like the prophet Habakkuk who said, "Though the fig tree does not blossom, yet I will rejoice." She has learned to worship in the wilderness, to dance in the drought, to believe even when nothing makes sense. The world cannot understand her because she does not live by its rhythm. Her joy is not delayed until the blessing arrives. It is the blessing. This is the hidden mark of a chosen soul, the one Carl Jung would say has undergone individuation, not by escaping pain, but by integrating it, not by pretending the darkness isn't there, but by standing tall in its presence and refusing to forget the light. She does not crumble when the world withdraws its approval, because she no longer builds her identity on what can be taken away. Her joy comes from knowing who she is beneath the layers of expectation, disappointment, and chaos. She has buried too many versions of herself to ever again question her worth. Her joy isn't loud, it's anchored. It doesn't shout to be noticed. It whispers in the shadows, "God is still enough." And in that whisper lies a roar that terrifies the very forces that tried to silence her. Every time she smiles through suffering, every time she chooses gratitude over bitterness, every time she lifts her hands in praise when everything around her says she should be falling apart, she proclaims the defeat of the enemy. This is why the darkness fears her, not because she is loud, but because she is light. She holds a rare energy, one that Carl Jung believed was only possible through deep inner work, the transformation of suffering into sovereignty, of despair into devotion. She doesn't run from the wound. She lives through it until it becomes wisdom. Her joy is a rebellion against everything that tried to take her out. And it is precisely this unexplainable joy in barren places that reveals who she really is. Not just a survivor, but a sacred soul chosen not for comfort, but for radiance. To affirm your unshakable joy and spiritual strength, declare it boldly in the comments. My joy is not of this world. Let this be your testimony that no storm can steal what God has placed within you. And if this message spoke to your spirit, like, share, and subscribe to keep walking in truth together. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the 7 hidden marks of the chosen woman through the lens of Carl Jung and spiritual wisdom. If something in this message resonated with your soul or sparked a new insight, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might need to hear it too. And if you're on a path of awakening and transformation, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the powerful truths we'll continue to explore in upcoming videos. Your journey matters, and we're honored to walk it with you. How to know how many lives you have lived. 9 signs of reincarnation. The soul never thinks without a picture. Aristotle. Have you ever met someone for the first time and felt like you've known them forever? Or picked up a new skill as if you'd mastered it long ago? These are more than coincidences. They could be echoes from a life you've lived before. In today's video on spiritual wisdom, we'll explore 9 powerful signs that may reveal how many lives your soul has experienced. But more importantly, this isn't just about curiosity. It's about using that knowledge to deepen your self-awareness and evolve in the present moment. As you watch, ask yourself, what memories might my soul be carrying? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's grow together on this sacred journey. 1. Stupidity is not a lack of intelligence. It's a dangerous social phenomenon. Stupidity is not simply the absence of intelligence. It is a social and spiritual virus that infects even the brightest minds. It creeps in silently, not through ignorance, but through unawareness. What makes it terrifying is that it doesn't always look like foolishness. Sometimes it speaks with confidence. It wears a kind smile. It holds a degree, and it often believes it is doing good. This is why Dietrich Bonhoeffer warned that stupidity is more dangerous than malice. A malicious person knows they intend harm. A stupid one, however, may enforce destruction with a clean conscience, believing they're on the side of righteousness. When intelligence becomes detached from self-awareness, it no longer guarantees wisdom. In fact, intelligence without spiritual grounding can become a tool of manipulation. This is what Bonhoeffer called functional stupidity, the kind that appears competent on the surface, but is fundamentally blind to truth. It resists correction, not because it cannot understand, but because it refuses to question. Once a person has outsourced their moral compass to ideology, authority, or groupthink, they are no longer capable of discernment. They no longer think they repeat. They no longer feel they conform. Carl Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating the unconscious, offers a key to understanding this phenomenon. When someone fails to individuate, they remain fragmented. They cling to external identities, roles, and rules because they haven't yet connected to their inner truth. And in doing so, they become susceptible to collective possession. Jung believed that when a person is possessed by the collective, their personal soul becomes eclipsed by archetypal forces. They may believe they are acting freely, but in truth, they have become instruments of something much darker. Unconscious conformity masquerading as morality. This is why stupidity is so difficult to treat with reason. It doesn't listen. It doesn't reflect. It doesn't feel the weight of its consequences. Facts and logic cannot penetrate it because it is rooted not in knowledge, but in identity. To challenge its beliefs is to threaten its sense of self. And so it doubles down. It hardens. It hides behind slogans, institutions, and moral superiority. It mimics virtue while dismantling truth. This is not stupidity of the mind. It is a spiritual disconnection from consciousness, a severing from one's own moral center. The spiritual cost of this disconnection is profound. When we stop thinking for ourselves, we stop hearing the voice within. We lose the ability to feel genuine empathy, to sense nuance, to respond rather than react. We fall into mechanical obedience, complying not because we believe, but because it feels safer to belong than to awaken. And in that sleep, harm is justified, tyranny is normalized, and evil advances not through monsters, but through everyday people who no longer question. To awaken from this requires courage. It demands that we reclaim our thoughts, take responsibility for our choices, and reconnect with our inner knowing. Spiritual wisdom teaches that true intelligence is not about how much we know, but how deeply we understand ourselves. It's not enough to be smart. Without awareness, without the light of discernment, intelligence becomes a weapon in the hands of shadow. The call, then, is not just to learn, but to wake up. Have you ever witnessed someone act irrationally despite being intelligent and well-meaning? Share your thoughts or experiences in the comments so we can explore this together. If this idea of dangerous stupidity is new to you, comment, "I'm waking up," to join the conversation and start seeing the world with clearer eyes. 2. Historical and psychological proof shows how ordinary people surrender moral judgment. In 1961, psychologist Stanley Milgram conducted an experiment that shattered our illusions about morality. Participants were told to administer electric shocks to a person in another room whenever they gave a wrong answer. The shocks weren't real, but the participants believed they were. As the learner screamed in pain, the authority figure calmly insisted they continue. And they did. 65% of them delivered what they thought were fatal shocks, all because someone in a white lab coat told them to. These weren't monsters. These were everyday people. Teachers, clerks, neighbors just following orders. Milgram's chilling conclusion was simple. The average person is capable of inflicting great harm, not out of hatred, but because they surrender moral responsibility to authority. They obey, even when it violates their conscience. This is the kind of quiet obedience that erodes the soul. German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer saw the same dynamic unfold during the Nazi regime. He wasn't just watching soldiers. He watched intellectuals, religious leaders, even spiritual thinkers all surrender their capacity for critical thought. They weren't stupid in the traditional sense. They were educated, articulate, even wise. But Bonhoeffer identified a far more dangerous force than ignorance. He called it the power of stupidity. Not the absence of intelligence, but the absence of reflection. The absence of moral clarity when it's needed most. He warned that stupidity, in this context, is not a passive defect, but an active threat, because it thrives under pressure, under conformity, under the weight of a crowd. When people stop thinking for themselves, they become instruments of destruction, even if they mean well. And the most terrifying part is they don't even realize it's happening. This isn't just history, it's human nature. It's the reason why spiritual awakening is more important now than ever. Because awakening means reclaiming your inner compass. It means seeing through the illusion of authority, no longer outsourcing your conscience to anyone. No government, no religion, no system. As Carl Jung once said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And that includes accepting our own potential for darkness when we abandon thought, when we blindly obey, when we let go of discernment. Spiritual wisdom teaches us that true awareness doesn't begin with intelligence, it begins with responsibility. The responsibility to stay conscious, especially when it's inconvenient. The responsibility to question, even when everyone else is silent. Because the real danger isn't in the loud voices of tyrants. It's in the quiet surrender of ordinary people who simply stopped thinking. If this insight into human obedience and moral surrender resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue uncovering the hidden forces that shape our choices together. 3. Functional stupidity is systemically reinforced by social, political, and economic pressures. Functional stupidity isn't just a random failure to think it's a system. And this system thrives in the modern world where groupthink is rewarded and deep thinking is punished. Dietrich Bonhoeffer warned that stupidity grows strongest in collective settings. When everyone starts conforming, challenging the norm becomes not just rare, it becomes risky. Carl Jung saw the same danger. He believed that spiritual awakening demands the courage to think for yourself, to look inward, and to resist the masks society forces you to wear. Look around the world doesn't encourage clarity. It encourages noise. Social media, with its endless scroll of slogans and outrage, thrives not on insight, but on reaction. The louder you are, the more attention you get. Political messaging is no better. It's designed to trigger, not to teach. In the workplace, exhaustion is glorified. People push through burnout, believing that being constantly busy is a sign of value. But fatigue doesn't make you sharper. It makes you compliant. When your body is tired and your mind is overwhelmed, the first thing you surrender is your critical thinking. You default to doing what's expected, not what's right. There's a story that echoes in countless offices and homes. A woman named Rachel worked for a fast-moving tech company. She was sharp, intuitive, and always asked questions that cut through the surface. But instead of being valued, her questions were labeled as disruptive. "Stop thinking so much," her manager said. "Just follow the playbook." Eventually, Rachel stopped questioning. She learned to blend in. She was promoted, praised for being efficient, but deep inside, she felt like she had betrayed herself. That's how functional stupidity works. It teaches you that success comes from silence, not insight. Carl Jung warned against this inner betrayal. When you stop thinking critically, you disconnect from your true self. You become a persona, a mask created to survive in a world that doesn't want your depth. But survival isn't the goal. Wholeness is. Jung believed that the path to transformation wasn't about pleasing the external world. It was about integrating your inner one. When you suppress your doubts, your voice, your clarity, you don't just lose your thoughts, you lose your soul. The modern world profits off your confusion. Emotional reactivity is more marketable than calm wisdom. Fear sells. Outrage spreads. And in that chaos, spiritual wisdom becomes rare. People scroll, click, repeat, but they rarely reflect. They accept what feels familiar. They mimic what sounds loud. They stop asking if any of it makes sense. And slowly, functional stupidity becomes a culture one that feels normal, even when it's deeply destructive. But you are not here to fit in. You are here to wake up, to protect your clarity like a sacred flame, to step back from the noise and ask, is this truly my belief or just my programming? Because once you start thinking for yourself again, once you choose awareness over autopilot, you begin to reclaim not just your intelligence, but your integrity. And that is where real power lives. Have you ever caught yourself going along with something just because it was easier than questioning it? If so, you're not alone. Comment below. I choose to think, to break the cycle of conformity and reclaim your critical mind. Let's awaken together. 4. Modern algorithms exploit human psychology to deepen willful ignorance. Modern algorithms are no longer just tools of convenience. They are invisible architects of our thoughts. Social media platforms are designed to feed the mind what keeps it emotionally hooked, not what brings clarity. And what captures attention fastest? Anger, fear, and outrage. These systems are not interested in truth. They're engineered to exploit emotion. Content that provokes a strong reaction spreads further and faster, meaning the truth is often buried under a mountain of emotionally charged misinformation. The more something triggers you, the more likely you are to engage. And that's exactly what these platforms want. Emotional manipulation has become the currency of the digital world, while reason and reflection fall to the margins. Over time, people are pushed deeper into echo chambers where they are constantly shown what they already believe. These bubbles feel comforting, but they are intellectually suffocating. Every click, like, and scroll tightens the circle of belief, making critical thinking feel like betrayal. Questioning becomes uncomfortable. Disagreement feels dangerous. This psychological trap aligns with Carl Jung's concept of projection. We begin to cast our shadows onto others and see enemies where there are none. What once were opportunities for dialogue now become battlegrounds of identity. Without spiritual wisdom, people lose their ability to pause, to think, and to empathize. They become protectors of their biases rather than seekers of truth. What makes this even more dangerous is the rise of AI-driven systems that can manipulate behavior with chilling accuracy. Unlike the propaganda machines of the past, which used posters and speeches, today's technology watches your every move, your facial expressions, your attention span, your pauses, and builds a psychological profile to influence you without your awareness. You are not simply browsing anymore. You are being guided, shaped, and nudged toward decisions you didn't truly make. What feels like free will is often a scripted path crafted by invisible systems. This isn't science fiction. It's psychological warfare waged through convenience, notifications, and personalized content. In such an environment, spiritual awakening becomes an act of rebellion. Awakening means noticing the strings being pulled. It means turning inward to reclaim sovereignty over your thoughts, your energy, and your emotional responses. It means asking deeper questions. Whose voice is this in my mind? Why do I believe this? Who benefits from me staying afraid or angry? It is not enough to detox your body. you must detox your perception. To remain awake in a sleeping world requires discipline, discernment, and deep inner clarity. This is why spiritual wisdom is your protection. When you reconnect to your core values and your deeper awareness, you begin to see through the noise. You stop reacting blindly and start responding with intention. You no longer chase validation or jump to outrage. Instead, you cultivate stillness in a system designed for chaos. And in that stillness, you become untouchable, not because you're detached from the world, but because you're fully rooted in your truth. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights on how modern technology is shaping our minds and what you can do to stay awake in an age of manipulation. 5. Stupidity is amplified by cognitive shortcuts and evolutionary wiring. Humans are not naturally wired for accuracy. We're wired for speed. When confronted with uncertainty or fear, the brain instinctively seeks shortcuts to reduce discomfort, even if it means sacrificing truth. That's why emotionally satisfying answers are often more appealing than complex realities. This isn't a question of IQ. It's not about intelligence at all. It's about vulnerability, a social and neurological vulnerability rooted in our evolutionary design. When people feel insecure, overwhelmed, or afraid, they become far more likely to cling to simplified narratives and repeat slogans rather than confront deeper, more complicated truths. This is how stupidity spreads, not as an insult, but as a silent epidemic of unconsciousness. It thrives in moments when critical thinking feels too heavy, too exhausting. It slips in when the need for emotional relief outweighs the need for intellectual clarity. As Carl Jung warned, the greatest dangers aren't always external. They're within us quiet, unquestioned patterns of thought. The real threat is not the absence of knowledge, but the surrender of awareness. When we give up thinking for ourselves in favor of pleasing answers and group-approved ideas, we give away our freedom without even realizing it. This makes stupidity contagious. One mind, overwhelmed and seeking simplicity, influences another, and soon, groups move like herds, reacting emotionally instead of thinking independently. In these moments, belonging becomes more important than truth. Echo chambers become comforting, and the loudest, most emotionally charged voices drown out nuance, wisdom, and integrity. People aren't thinking, they're reacting, and often to the wrong things. The collective mind becomes easy to manipulate, not because people are inherently foolish, but because they've been conditioned to avoid discomfort at all costs. This is why spiritual awakening is no longer a luxury, it is a necessity. Awakening is what happens when we begin to notice these patterns within ourselves. When we realize that the search for ease, comfort, and belonging often leads us away from truth. Awakening doesn't mean having all the answers. It means being willing to question the answers you've already accepted. It means seeing clearly when you're being pulled into a narrative because it feels good, not because it's right. It means catching yourself before you give in to collective emotionalism disguised as wisdom. To awaken is to choose awareness over convenience, to pause in that tiny space between stimulus and response and say, wait, what's really going on here? As Viktor Frankl once said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose. In our choice lies our growth and our freedom. That space is where truth lives. That space is where your spiritual awakening begins. Do you see how deeply wired this really is? If this message resonates with you, declare it in the comments. I choose truth over comfort. 6. Bonhoeffer's solution costly grace, and the daily practice of intellectual courage. Thinking independently is no longer encouraged in a world obsessed with speed, comfort, and conformity. It's inconvenient, it's slow, and often it isolates you. But as Carl Jung warned, the real danger to society isn't evil intentions, it's unconscious behavior. People don't need to be malicious to cause harm. They simply need to stop thinking, to go along with the crowd, to trade truth for approval. That's why German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer introduced the concept of costly grace, a kind of spiritual discipline that demands intellectual courage. It's not enough to believe in something. You must be willing to pay the price of awareness, to walk alone if necessary, and to hold yourself accountable to truth rather than popularity. Most people prefer cheap grace slogans over substance, certainty over curiosity. But Bonhoeffer argued that spiritual wisdom demands more. It asks us to confront ourselves daily, to engage in the painful but necessary task of thinking clearly. Carl Jung called this individuation, the slow process of becoming a whole person by integrating your unconscious mind, your fears, and even the parts of yourself you were taught to reject. This is what separates the spiritually awake from the blindly obedient. Let's bring it into modern life. Picture a young professional bombarded by trending headlines, peer opinions, and influencer rants. She notices everyone is reposting the same outrage, echoing the same perspective. But instead of joining in, she hesitates. She reads from sources she normally avoids. She questions her assumptions. She dares to say, "I'm not sure," and opens herself to learn. In doing so, she doesn't become weaker. She becomes freer. Others quietly reach out to thank her. They were silently doubting too, but felt trapped by the pressure to conform. Her courage gave them room to breathe. This is what intellectual humility looks like. It's not a weakness to say, "I don't know." It's a sign of maturity, of spiritual grounding. In a society addicted to quick takes and instant judgment, the simple act of pausing to reflect becomes a form of rebellion. To think slowly is to move consciously. To seek opposing views is to sharpen your vision, not to betray your values. You practice this by building habits that challenge your comfort zone. Read opinions that disturb you. Question your strongest beliefs. Verify facts before sharing anything, even when it supports your side. And most importantly, develop the inner strength to admit when you're unsure. These are not just acts of intellect. They are acts of spiritual awakening. Carl Jung reminds us that what we fail to face internally, we project externally. So if we don't examine our thinking, our shadows end up controlling us. Stupidity is not the absence of intelligence, it's the refusal to engage the mind and heart together. And that refusal is what turns ordinary people into unconscious participants in harm. Spiritual wisdom doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be honest. It asks you to stay awake, not to the world's noise, but to your own thoughts. And that's where transformation begins. If this message speaks to you, say it out loud. I choose costly grace. I will think for myself, even when it's hard. Then comment below to affirm your commitment. And if you're ready to grow in intellectual courage, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who dares to question. 7. Structural change is essential to restore intellectual independence. Structural change is no longer a luxury. It is a necessity if we are to reclaim our ability to think independently. In a world that constantly pushes us into survival mode, better economic policies are not just about financial relief. They are about creating the mental and emotional space for reflection, awareness, and insight. Chronic stress wears down our cognitive functions, narrowing our focus to immediate threats and robbing us of the freedom to question, create, and imagine alternatives. When people are constantly burdened by economic insecurity, their minds become trapped in loops of worry, not wonder. That is why healing begins with restructuring the environment that suffocates our mental clarity. But restructuring the outer world is only one piece of the puzzle. We are now silently governed by invisible forces, algorithms, and digital platforms that dictate not just what we consume, but what we believe. These technologies, left unchecked, shape human consciousness on a mass scale. They amplify outrage, suppress nuance, and feed us content designed to keep us hooked, not free. Demanding transparency from these systems is not just a tech issue, it is a spiritual one. Spiritual wisdom calls us to awaken from illusion, to pierce through what is manufactured, and to return to inner truth. And in a digital world curated to distract and divide, choosing discernment is a revolutionary act of self-respect. The tools we need to resist this manipulation are not just technical, they are foundational. Media literacy and critical thinking must become basic human rights. These are not elite skills reserved for academics. They are survival tools for the soul. When we fail to teach people how to think, we leave them defenseless against propaganda, fear, and conformity. The ability to ask, "Is this true?" or "Who benefits from this belief?" is the beginning of spiritual awakening. It restores our agency and reconnects us to our deepest intuition. Carl Jung reminded us that a man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them. Similarly, a society that has never questioned its collective assumptions cannot claim to be conscious. Most of all, the act of thinking real thinking, not memorizing, not reacting, is a sacred responsibility. To pause before judgment, to choose clarity over comfort, to reflect rather than follow, is to reclaim the dignity of being fully human. In a time where obedience is mistaken for morality and compliance is sold as peace, the courage to think is the ultimate form of spiritual defiance. It is not enough to wake up spiritually without also waking up intellectually. The two must walk together, heart and mind aligned in service of truth. When we embrace both structural reform and inner clarity, we create a culture where consciousness is protected, not punished, where awareness is nurtured, not numbed. This is the heart of true transformation. Not just reforming systems, but reclaiming the sacred space within us, where truth, thought, and soul become one. If this message has awakened something in you, leave a comment of conviction. I believe in the power of critical thinking. I will protect my mind and demand the truth. 8. The closing challenge. Intellectual freedom requires eternal vigilance. Functional stupidity doesn't feel like foolishness. It feels like certainty. That's what makes it so dangerous. It wraps itself in confidence and conviction, creating the illusion that no further thought is necessary. People stop asking questions, not because they're incapable, but because they believe they already know enough. And in that illusion of knowing, they surrender their greatest power, the ability to think freely. This kind of mental submission can seep into institutions, communities, and even our own inner lives, where following the script becomes more comfortable than writing your own. But the heart of spiritual awakening is the refusal to go numb. It is the inner fire that says, "Stay awake, even when it hurts. Stay curious, even when it's inconvenient. Stay questioning, even when the answers make you an outsider. Because awakening isn't about having all the answers. It's about not abandoning the questions. It's choosing awareness over agreement, insight over instruction, and presence over passive acceptance. In a world where emotional obedience is often mistaken for virtue, to think independently is nothing short of revolutionary. True courage lies not in loud rebellion, but in quiet resistance, like the decision to pause before following the crowd, the instinct to reflect before reacting, the strength to ask why when silence would be easier. Bonhoeffer's question, "Who stands fast?" is more than a moral challenge. It is a spiritual one. Who remains rooted in truth when the world drifts into delusion? Who stays conscious when it would be safer to sleep? This is not a theoretical dilemma. It's a personal call to arms. Because spiritual wisdom is not found in knowing what's comfortable. It's found in enduring what's true. When the world rewards those who follow the path of least resistance, those who choose inner clarity over collective noise become the rare ones, the awake ones. And it is not intelligence alone that separates them. It is their refusal to give up their soul in exchange for fitting in. So the real question becomes, will you surrender your awareness for the comfort of agreement? Or will you carry the weight of consciousness, even when it costs you certainty? In the end, awakening isn't a moment. It's a decision. A decision to keep thinking, keep feeling, keep questioning, especially when no one else will. To affirm your dedication to intellectual freedom, declare your commitment. Comment below, "I will stay awake," to honor the courage it takes to keep thinking, questioning, and standing fast even when the world chooses comfort over truth. Let your words inspire others to do the same. So the next time you encounter ignorance, ask yourself, is this stupidity or obedience in disguise? Carl Jung believed that the refusal to think critically is one of the most dangerous forces in society. And perhaps the true threat isn't evil, it's unconsciousness. If this message has opened your eyes or stirred something within you, don't let it stop here. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this truth, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more deep insights into the human mind and soul. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of awakening. Until next time, stay aware, stay grounded, and stay wise.